I have been many things in my life. To borrow from an earlier speaker, I was a 15-year-old who was told he could make a difference. I've been an actor, a nonprofit executive director, a community organizer, and I now work in philanthropy. I've got letters after my name, but the one role I play that I have identified with more than anything else is my role as a dad. I have known I wanted to be a dad my entire life. And sometimes we take for granted that drive coming from women, mothers, teen girls who want to have children, and we sort of act as though men are just sort of making their way through life and they fall into parenthood like a pothole no one saw coming. Not me. Parenthood and fatherhood for me was destiny, it was known, and it was expected. And in my life, that came true on February 24th, 2005, when my son Declan was born. And I will never forget walking up to the nursery in the hospital. My wife was a tough labor. We decided to have her sleep the night. My son was in the NICU, or in the nursery, and you got to knock on the door to get allowed in. And I knock on the door and I say, "My name is Tym Rourke and I'm here to see my son." And I literally remember the earth shaking. I literally remember this sound in my head, this sort of thunderous noise, and in an instant, I became somebody else entirely. It was one of the most profound moments of my life. And becoming a dad, as I said, it was part of my destiny. It was part of what I expected in life, and I reveled in it. I never felt so in my skin. I never felt so on the ground, present in the world, sense of who I am, as I did, enjoying that experience of being a new dad, until it changed. My son had a relatively healthy first year and a half, and there was nothing to believe that anything unexpected was coming, but it did. I look at this picture a lot because it was taken about 12 hours before my entire life changed. My son had a stomach bug, or at least that's what we thought, and at the time, our pediatrician talked to us about the local bug that was going around. Our son was in daycare, not a surprise at all, he'd come home with something. On this day, though, he actually started to feel a little better. And I had taken this picture while he was eating lunch, and he hadn't really been eating much for most of the week. I look at this picture a lot now because the unexpected is going on in this photo. I wouldn't have noticed it. Most parents wouldn't have noticed it. In fact, you may be looking at this picture and saying, "What's possibly going on here?" But you'll notice his smile. It's a little bit of a smirk. There's not a lot going on the left side of his face. And about 12 hours later, we would find out why. He was in his room. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. The baby monitor was on, and I heard this sound. And for as long as I live, I will never be able to describe it other than to say it was really just evil and wrong. We found him in his crib, not looking well at all, unable to sit up, not really moving his left side, and his mouth was doing this twitch. So there was a little bit of new parent anxiety. Are we seeing things? Should we take you to the doctor? And a short trip to the emergency room later, a doctor came into the room. My wife was eating a bagel. I think I was eating a muffin. He had fallen asleep, really strangely, but nevertheless was asleep. And this doctor comes in after a CT scan and says, "I'm sorry, there is a mass in your son's head." And immediately, I became somebody different. I became the dad of a cancer patient. You're looking at an MRI scan of my son's brain. This actually is not the scan that was taken that day. This was taken later on during his treatment. So what you see here, this black hole, this is the right side of his brain, so you're looking at a mirror image. This is between the frontal and parietal lobe, right about here. It was a brain tumor about the size of a ping pong ball. In the CT scan on that day, of course, it showed up as a white mass. This is the hole that remains after his tumor was removed. My son was diagnosed with something called Atypical Teratoid Rhabdoid Tumor of the spine, CNS, or ATRT for short. It is extremely rare. In the United States, we diagnose approximately 32 young people a year with this disease. It strikes children under the age of 3. Prior to 1997, mortality from an ATRT brain tumor was 100% within 6 months of diagnosis. No one survived. We were fortunate, however, that it was not 1997, it was 2006. And by the way, the day that this all happened, the day that my life changed again and I became the dad of a cancer patient, was Father's Day. But we were fortunate that when he was diagnosed, our oncologist said, "Don't look at the internet, don't look at the statistics, there is possibly a treatment." But it's what the treatment evolved that was a challenge for us. Treatment for ATRT is the kitchen sink approach. Most cancer patients, particularly adult cancer patients, might get 1 or 2 chemotherapy agents as a course of treatment for them. Declan's chemotherapy protocol included 12 chemotherapy agents, 12 of the most cytotoxic medications on the planet. It included 6 weeks of radiation and 52 weeks of actual chemotherapy in 3-week cycles. And adding for illness and all of the damage that chemotherapy can do to a cancer patient, his treatment lasted about 1.5 years. And those 12 chemotherapy agents were given in adult doses into the body of a 15-month-old. So I get 3 questions. I'm going to stop telling my story and share with you the 3 questions I get when I talk about my experience as the dad of a cancer patient. The first is, I can't imagine that happening. How did you get through that? Some of you may have just had that intrinsic response right now. The second is there a silver lining here? Truly, because this is the test around the silver lining around a cloud. Is there a silver lining in something like this? And the third, a question that was given to me one of the first times I shared my son's story is, how do you not quit your job and just take your kid to Disney World every day for the rest of his life? Let me answer question number 1. How do you get through it? How do you get through when the unexpected doesn't open doors in your life, it closes them? Doesn't give you an option to engage, but forces you down a path. I came to learn in that 1.5 years of experience working with my wife, my son, and our family to endure that experience, that it is amazing what humans are capable of when you don't have a choice. Because truly, I didn't have a choice. Interestingly, on the consent form for his treatment, there is a choice not to treat. But given the mortality rates of this disease, that's not an option. So we find within ourselves this wellspring of ability to respond to the unavoidable when it comes our way. Never mind the inherent strength and supermanness, as I would like to call it, that comes when you're a parent. For parents, and there are many in the room, I'm sure, and some of you may be thinking about becoming parents someday, you will discover within you this drive that you will do anything for your child. We certainly lived it in that 1.5 years. So do I know what it is exactly I did that leaves me up here actually ambulatory and functioning after a traumatic experience like that? I don't know. I didn't have a choice. It sprung from within me because that's all I could possibly do. The second is the question of silver lining, and it was actually asked of me by a reporter who was doing a story on my son for a fundraiser that was being held on our behalf. He asked on a pretty bad day, and I gave a flippant answer about the community. But you know, I've spent my whole life organizing communities to do better on behalf of young people. And this was an experience for my wife and my family and the good work that we had done in our communities as agents of change and members of our communities for the universe to pay us back. We saw incredible kindness from complete strangers. We saw fridges full of food, cards that lined walls in our house. A stage 4 brain tumor survivor I didn't even know, a friend of a friend of a friend, who called me out of the blue and said, I just want to tell you, doctors told me I'd be dead in a week. I've been alive for 1.5 years, and my attitude has been, if somebody's going to beat this disease, why not me? And if somebody's going to beat that cancer, why not your son? Those kind of moments gave me such gratitude, such a touch with the human nature of all of us that is blind to title, blind to stature, blind to status, blind to professional affiliation. And the third question, how do I not quit my job and go to Disney World with my child every single day? Because I can tell you that I could take him to Disney World because my son is very much alive. He is actually right now one of the very few long-term survivors of ATRT in the world, and his treatment has been part of a research study that is now replicating this treatment for ATRT patients worldwide. I don't need to take him to Disney World. We get Disney World every single day. We get it in his 6th birthday, which happened this year. We get it in the very first time he hit a baseball. I don't like sports, yet I'm the dad weeping openly in the corner. We get it in his ability to run, when the vincristine drug he was given made it impossible for him to walk. And for this, to tie it all together, I need to thank Matt for the bracing he put on my son's legs so that he could run without falling. It is a boy who was not supposed to live to preschool, who this year started first grade. And it is a boy that thought he might not get a chance, who just 5 weeks ago became a big brother to a beautiful baby girl. There is so much to be afraid of when the unexpected closes doors. Having been through that experience, I want to leave you with this. One day it will come for you. One day the unexpected will close doors in your life. It will take the ground from underneath you. It will test who you are, how you view the world, what you perceive your tomorrow will look like. It is very, very scary, and it can feel very, very alone. In those times, when that moment hits, if you take anything away from this, please remember, you have no idea what you are capable of. You have no idea of the strength that resides within you. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Thank you very much.